Well, it's made a nice little impression. Leaving our mark yet again, Cardi B. But, well, it's time to say goodbye to this grassy field. I hope you enjoyed your, well, stay here, Cardi, considering I pretty well just abandoned you here for multiple days at a time. But, well, I'm definitely not going to miss, just in terms of wealth structuring, the high amount of, well, I think you know what by this point. So, okay, let's go. So, I realized about halfway through the editing of the last video that I didn't show, well, Laval City Hall. You know, well, in terms of the municipal government, the corruption headquarters. But, here it is. And oddly enough, it's not in the center of the downtown area, it's in the southwestern end of it, close to St. Martin. And, well, so that's all. Well, it's, as you can see, right next to various, well, actually, interestingly enough, again, with the lack of pseudo-segregation, it's predominantly surrounded by, well, ultra-rich, high-end wealthy apartment buildings, as well as, well, some, either the, okay, this one isn't, so Uniprix apparently is a, well, it's a mega corporate pharmaceutical company. This isn't its headquarters. In the video I talked about where, well, I talked about my backpack getting stolen outside of the public library down there. I had said that I thought that this might be its headquarters. It's not. Its headquarters is in Montreal. But this is some sort of, well, executive branch. Again, seems to be. As for that company, CIMA Plus, I have no clue if that's its headquarters or not. But, well, still corporate entity of some kind, as well as the people I've seen going in and out of, well, these housing units, and from me actually trying to at one point enter this one to just use the washroom. Well, they're private, and well, you need to be a resident to enter, and also, well, the amount of blingy cars and some degree fashion attire that's in this area is telling me some things. But interestingly enough, these apartment buildings over here are very much more lower income, like right across the road. And then going down this road here, it'll take you, again, like I said, into the St. Martin district and right to what is a very, very, very impoverished and very, well, very rough and struggling neighborhood. It's not constituted, it's not constituted as, again, by what I've looked up, by most of the local community, but from fitting definitions, it seems like it could match it in terms of, well, gang activity, clearly, as I've noticed, in terms of tagging poverty, very unstable financial infrastructure, and, well, police patrols and activity, and also police brutality. As I will discuss later in this video, actually, of an incident that happened on this road whilst I was filming the videos Exploring Laval Part 4 and Part 5, showcasing small business restaurants just down a ways. But, yeah, these apartment complexes are very, very, well, they're lower income for the most part, it seems to be, in terms of just general infrastructure and residents and general maintenance of the places. When I've strolled through the neighborhood down there towards a park and actually bothered to examine, well, the care of the buildings. But, well, it's just interesting. I guess they thought in the downtown area with how much of a, well, how much of a land development hotspot, and as far as I'm concerned, privatization and corporate nightmare hellscape it is. Well, I guess they thought they didn't have another place to put the city hall. Now, I don't know when it was specifically, I don't know what year it was constructed, this building, or if this building was used for other purposes when it was. Well, I just talked for a minute straight and didn't realize that I guess I had accidentally hit the stop button on the recording. Anyway, what I was saying was, I don't know if this building wasn't initially City Hall. I don't know how long it's been operating as it, well, as the municipal government's legislative center. I don't know how long it's been doing that, if it wasn't initially for that. As well as the fact, as you can plainly see, the Laval city symbol is, it's, if I can ever film it properly, it's a three-dimensional L that's halfway on its side. Because I guess municipal officials thought that looked like a good design, or a creative design that represented their city. Guess they thought it was intriguing to people. Let's make a, I know guys, let's make a three-dimensional L that's cubic in style, or cubic shaped. But we'll turn it on its side, as if it looks like it's halfway to falling down and completely crashing to the ground. It'll be a perfect representation of how our city is. Come on, guys. Well, okay. Metaphorically, if you want to look at it like that, then yeah, it is a perfect representation. But, yeah, I think it's stupid. Just personally, I'm sorry, it's a very, just from my personal opinion on it, aesthetically, I think it's just it's a very uncreative and basic. Like, it's a design that looks like there was no thought put into it. Yeah, they put one face of the cubes making up the L. Two of them are white, the underside is blue, and then two other sides of the cubes faces are pink. Yeah, it's very bland. It doesn't have much, it feels like it doesn't have much thought put into it. Okay, so yeah, you know what, again, perfect representation of the City Hall. And the municipal government, so. Interestingly enough, though, the thought had crossed my mind, considering, because in exploring Laval parts 2 and 3, I talked about, well, the current mayor of the city, Stefan Boyer. And I did have the thought to maybe, because I've tried entering City Hall, but, well, it's always been when it's closed, and it was only going to be to use the washroom. But I did have the thought to potentially try and see if I could go in and get some sort of maybe quick interview with the mayor if he was there, and just ask him, I guess subtly, ask him questions, but subtly try and, one, further psychoanalyze him in person, actually, not just going off of the political policies he's put in place, and, very idiotic decisions that that he caters to and promotes. I thought about just actually... Okay, the recording once again stopped. I think I know why, so I'm pretty sure I've resolved that issue. But anyway, I thought about getting an interview, or just trying to quickly see if I can speak to Mr. Mayor, just by entering the city hall and seeing if he was there and was up for just a quick interview. Just to subtly try and, ask him questions, and also just to, one, psychoanalyze him further and actually get an in-person perspective on things, and not just going off of societal policies he's put in place and also very much condoned. But just to, address that for myself, and subtly try and try and deduce more of his actual beliefs towards, towards his stance on various political topics. But, that'll have to wait. If I'm ever back in Laval, and if he's still the mayor at the time, then sure, I'll try and... I will try and speak to him about, his perpetuation of these issues in a more discreet manner, as well as, I guess, question about his very much, private sector friends and, friends in the police force as well. And, their whole shenanigans. But, for now, it'll have to wait. It's already currently May 27th, and I wasn't planning on staying in this area as long as I have now. It's obviously not gone a terrible amount further into me being here, or longer than I wanted to. But, I'm gonna get going to make my loop back around the city. From here, I'm going to head down back into St. Martin, then to a neighborhood that's beside Chomedy, called Pledgemont Repos, I believe it's called Pledgemont. The last word is Repos, and it's a very, very wealthy neighborhood. So I'm obviously gonna try and explore around there and see what I deduce. Then from there, I'm going to head into the St. Dorothy district, which is neighboring St. Martin. Then into the district of Laval West, which is the westernmost half of the city. then head, well, to the northwestern end into the district of Fabreville, then back into St. Rose, where I was, well, a couple weeks ago now, or a bit more, well, no, well, pretty well 3 weeks ago now. And then, well, head over into the district of Auteuil, I believe is how it's pronounced in my accent. Auteuil, which is in the northeastern end. Then back down into Vermont and back to, well, trying to resolve what I had initially started and have been researching for Cité de la Santé. And then back into Pont-Veilleux, and then out to the easternmost district of Debvoy, I believe is how it's pronounced. And then heading over a connecting bridge from Jesus Island into Montreal Island and to the city of Montreal. So, and when I go back to St. Rose, I will be trying to, and along my way there, be trying to conclude or get some more answers, at least, in regards to the fire of House 265. I will make calls to various numbers on the documents I found from the pictures I took, and then, well, see what I can find. Okay. Also, sorry if this opening bit was rather, well, for how long, I guess, it's been, because it's not the main section of the video, obviously. But I've also been a bit padding for time, just to give YouTube's auto-generating thumbnail system. Okay, this is getting annoying a bit. I guess I didn't resolve that recording issue. Whatever, I'll figure that out when I figure it out. Long story short, I will be getting naked again in this video. So, but, well, you already know that based on the title of it. So, just gathering enough footage for the thumbnail generator to do its work and pick as it chooses. Okay, I'm going to get going because I'm hungry and just get something to satiate my extravagant desire for Hungarious consumption. I don't even think Hungarious is a fucking word. Alright. If throughout the portion of this, well, this bit of the video, you hear rippling or rushing water, that is because I am camped out literally right beside Prairie's River, which is, well, sandwiched in between southern Jesus Island and northern Montreal Island. So, just, if you're annoyed by that, apologies. If you have no problem with it, that is a piece of your information that you now have. You're welcome. Okay. Before I go into the main portion of the video, I know I already recorded a separate bit of footage, and I'm not going to make this overly long because I want to get to the main point. I want to somewhat correct myself in in regards to a restaurant I showed for the small business restaurants I was documenting in Exploring Laval Part 4 and 5. In Part 4, the second restaurant I went to, Restaurant Le Bella, I believe it's called, I thought that was a small business, given, well, from what I had initially seen of it. But apparently I was wrong. It's technically not. They are moderately expansionist. At least it's a bit odd. I later looked it up, and it seems to be one of those things where it's a company that just solely brands the restaurant facility accordingly with its, well, staple, but they don't, I think it seems to be one of those restaurants where they don't have they don't make executive decisions for policies of how the restaurant is run, or even, I guess, what food items are technically sold. Because in that one, it was Quebecois, culturally themed. And then I noticed that there was another location in St. Martin. And then looking it up, there was another in Vermont, and it's all over the GMA. But I think it seems to be one of those ones where the branch owners themselves have executive control, or a complete control over the decision factors for their branch, and, well, whatever profit is made, they make, and it also gets funneled back to the organization that provides the branding of the business. And I'm not sure about if that's the case. I don't know if they provide the food supply for each business, but, well, regardless, I'd just like to correct that. I was wrong about my initial assumptions when I was in Pont-Veilleux. Food was still fantastically made, but, well, yeah, I was wrong about that. If I had known, I would have, because I'd never heard of the brand before of the restaurant, and I hadn't seen, at least to my recollection, any others around. So it seemed to be, and also the condition that the place was in, it seemed to be, well, that place at the very least definitely was under, it seems, some amount of maintenance pressure in terms of financial ability to remodel things or keep up certain. No, I think, well, anyway, if you saw the video, you know. Or you know. So, just apologies for that. But now, for the actual part of this video, what am I doing? Well, today, May 29th, is, if I'm recalling correctly, well, it's either the 29th or the 30th, or maybe, well, it's May of the 31st, the end of May, is the 1-year anniversary of me having physically left the city of Toronto, Ontario. On my former motorized bicycle. And I thought, considering all the shit that I have been through and done my time since leaving the city, I thought I'd just make a video sharing some stories that I haven't really highlighted, or at least my recollection haven't really highlighted on the channel so far. Might have mentioned them here and there briefly, but haven't actually gone into depth about them. So I thought that'd be interesting to just do. And as you've read the title, I also decided I'm going to do it while nude. Because why not? It'd be more comfortable for me, and also, hey, I said in my first nudist video that I made that I was going to do more videos just casually being naked, non-sexually. So yeah, okay. And I guess this will also give a bit more time for YouTube to generate a thumbnail. But regardless. Oh, and I also have that was a duck. Sure. I'm sitting by, well, the flap here of my tent, or where the zipper is, just to keep an eye out for anyone coming along. Not that I am worried much about it, just in case. This is a relatively secluded area anyway. But, well, I obviously don't care if they hear me talking about my travels or if they were to see me naked, but, well, again, as I mentioned in the last video like this, what I care about is if they have a problem with that, which is unfortunate, but, well, interestingly, it's a bit of an issue actually setting up the camera in here. I didn't actually, obviously, I don't know if you can tell, but I didn't actually use a tripod stand. I used just the head of it, tilted it on its side, and then balanced it against the end of my sleeping bag and, well, the back wall fabric of my tent. So, and that side is on a bit of a downward divot. So it would have been better to put it there. Anywhere else to do. I've just been accustomed to piling my clothes both when I'm sleeping and just whenever I'm undressed on this bag that I have for my blanket. So it's fine. Okay. I'll probably also, like the other video, just provide a bit of edited in censorship, maybe right here or so, just so YouTube can take whatever more precautions they want. But anyway, so start? Well, let's go with the obvious. When I was in Toronto and was living on the streets for a week before leaving. Now, the only reason that I had bothered to even sleep in the streets was, well, why I didn't just decide to take what I had with me and leave the city, was because I knew there were certain things that I would most likely need for my survival, and I spent the time that week gathering things that I thought I would need as necessities, along with also because I wanted to say farewell to, well, various people that I knew, actually in person. So those are the main reasons. And whilst doing that, I talked about this in my Made It to Peterborough videos, that I met a person who was a motorized bike dealer. I was walking along, what was the road? Lawrence Avenue East in the Scarborough district, West Hill neighborhood. I was walking along there at night. I was going to stay at a friend's house who had invited me there after shooting off fireworks for Victoria Day down by the beach. And they initially passed me, but then they turned around and stopped me and said, "Hey, can I just talk to you for a minute? I see that you're struggling here with your bike. It's a, if I'm recalling, it was a 1950s style pedal. It was a pedal bike, obviously, and it was, well, okay, I don't know the make or model of, I don't know the model of it, but point being, it was shit as far as I'm concerned, at least for my needs. It was not adequate at all, and I was absolutely foolish to think that I was going to ride out of the city on that thing. I was going to pedal my way out with all the things that I was gathering. But basically they said, "Hey, I see you're struggling with this. See, it's very hard to pedal, and I know these types of bikes, they're very hard to pedal, and especially the braking. If you want, I own an independent small motorized bicycle auto shop where I make and craft, I turn standardized cyclist bikes into motor-powered vehicles, or motor-powered bikes, because they were heavily into engineering and things of the sort. And they said, if you want, I could either sell you a different bike for a cheaper price, or I could attach a motor for you to this one, and also fuel tank and nodules to close chambers and things of the sort. I could attach it for you so that it's actually easier to ride this thing without having to pedal it everywhere." And they gave me their card, and so they said, "Just think about it and give me a call." And then we went on our merry ways. And oh, come on, Trineo nerve. No, you're not gonna sneeze, okay. Seems like my allergies are kicking in. Or whatever. Allergies. Anyway, so we went on our merry ways, and then after about maybe 3 days with the bike, I was like, you know what? I will give this person a call. Because this is not really working out. So I called them, and then they told me where they were, located conveniently in Scarborough. And I went to them, and we met, and we talked. Not just about the bike. We actually had, and I went to see them regularly over the week that I was there, just to talk about some things, and also because I was having issues with the bike that I purchased. But we got into long talks about Islam and atheism and agnosticism, because, well, they're Muslim, and I was, well, an agnostic atheist. And we also got into talks. They asked me what was I doing, because they found out I was sleeping on the streets. And at the time I was referring to myself technically as semi-homeless. But realistically, I've been homeless since leaving Toronto Tech, even though I've had places to stay. But talked about that. They asked why I was on the streets. I told them about my initial issues with my family, and then my existential and morality crisis, and how I felt I can't stay here in Toronto anymore, and I need to actually experience the world outside of Toronto instead of just solely researching it from behind a computer screen or a phone screen. And then we also got into talks about how I was a writer, and also how I wanted to be a pornographer. And then we got into some talks about the LGBTQ plus and homosexuality, and I vaguely talked about gynosexuality. So it's what I am, but didn't fully say it. Mainly because they didn't have prejudice. Well, they didn't have blatant prejudice towards those within my community, but I would say subtle ignorance. But either way, they were a genuinely fantastic person. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. They were incredibly compassionate and caring, and we had a lot of very, very in-depth philosophical discussions about religion and the state of the world, and the Islamic world. But so they sold me Timmy, a motorized bicycle, and basically I was having issues with, at first, operating Timmy, and I would call them and then their nephew, who I became acquainted with as well. But I'll talk about them in a bit. But main thing I want to focus on is, at one point, as I mentioned this in the fourth part of Before Leaving the Cottage. That's a series of videos I made while I was staying in Crow's Landing. And it's occurred to me that I don't believe I've ever fully explained it. So basically, at one point when we were discussing religion, and it was between it was varying between, well, the main three predominant, well, three of the main predominant religions in the world right now. All three being technically Semitic religions. Well, it was discussion between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And we had also previously been talking about how Islam is a monotheistic religion, believing in one supreme being. And we also got into talks of, at this same time, of Zoroastrian, what's the name? Zoroastrianism. Yes, Zoroastrianism. It's a branch of religion that came out of Iran. And then I mentioned Baha'i, the Baha'i faith. But anyway, in all this, they said, I want to do a test for you. I want to actually see if you can do it, because most people can't. Which I was like, okay, what is it? And a bit manipulative. They kind of deceived me into thinking that it was going to be something else. Like, it's not like I asked permission for this to happen. Personally, I don't care in this regard. But basically, they said, and I don't remember it phrase for phrase, so I'm not going to repeat it, but they said, I want you to repeat these phrases after me, and I want to see how you pronounce them, or how you say them, or if you question it, basically. And it was something along the lines of Allah Rishe, and now I can say Allah Rishe, and Afir Fitrun, and obviously I'm speaking nonsense Arabic here. This is an actual wording for it. And basically, I repeated what they said in Arabic, and then they want me to repeat it in English. And so I repeated in English, and it was along the lines of, I accept Allah as the one true Savior, and I put my faith and trust in His knowledge, and though I may be dissuaded and things of the sort. So I repeated this after him, and basically that was the test, and they said that you did that better than most people that I've met myself. Most people can't even pronounce the Arabic part here in the West, but they don't, who aren't of either Arab descent or from a predominantly speaking country, or Arabic speaking country. And he said, you have now taken the first step into conversion, into becoming a Muslim, and passing on to the religion of Islam as faith. But so, in the eyes of the mosque, you will be welcomed into the process of faithful belief now that you have taken this first step, and you may choose in accordance with, and I looked this up myself as well in further research, in accordance with the initial doctrines of the Quran and Islam. It is a part of the religion that you may, who have taken, I guess, this process, you may choose to fully convert, go through the rest of the steps to becoming a devout Muslim, or you may just stay at phase 1 here. You may never choose to fully identify or convert to becoming a Muslim into Islamic belief, but you are always welcome now into the religion by the eyes of the mosque. And also this means that all past sins of yours that would be deemed as sinful in the eyes of the one true creator are absolved, and they are put in the past and are relieved, basically, as you have now taken the steps to enlightenment, basically. And I thought, oh, okay. Interesting. That's interesting. So by that definition, I'm technically an honorary Muslim, I guess you could say. Say that phase 1 of conversion, technically. By the eyes of the Islamic religion, well, I have taken the first step. And there's just no going back after that. So it's not a problem to me. Obviously, I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in any sort of God or higher entity, any omnipotent being, as I've laid in my theories of the paradox of a loving God and omnipotence, and in some theology and philosophy, and also the paradox of non-come advocation theocracy. So, obviously, I don't believe in any sort of higher entity of any kind. But, well, I've carried that around with me ever since I've left Toronto. Obviously, nothing's come about with it. It's just something that happened. And then we went on with the rest of our discussions. That's one story. So, it's another. Sticking with the first few here from Toronto. So, well, seeing as I mentioned their nephew, they talk about my encounters with them. So apparently, when I met them, it was on the same day that I had gone the first time to their uncle's small shop, and basically I found out that they apparently went to my same school when I was in school, because this is after I had dropped out of high school. And we got into discussions about my family and the difficulties I was having with them at the time. And they invited me to, if I needed to at any point, come stay at their house before leaving the city. If I needed food, water, just general shelter, warmth, a place to sleep, to just come by. And I thanked them, but with at the time my whole ideals of not wanting to burden people, what I had thought would be technically burdening, I didn't want to very much. But on my last day, well, on my second to last day in Toronto, I decided to stay there. because I figured, why not? I had already stayed at least, well, two of my other friends' places for the week that I had been living on the streets. So I alternated between the streets and people's houses. And when I got there, we discussed psychology and discussed, well, religion again. And they had gifted me a book about the Great Purge of the Soviet Union, which I wanted to read. But, well, fortunately, I had to leave it behind. I left it with a friend of mine for them to read. Because with the things that I had, I figured I couldn't take it with me. Which, if they're watching this, I'm sorry about that. I really did want to read it. But, well, anyway, we ate burgers and hot dogs at their place the night that I got there. And they had educated me on something that I didn't know about Islam, about jihadism. They had told me, because I had mentioned it in terms of how jihadist extremist groups do not, from what the text of Islam or how it initially was formed, as far as I'm concerned, the initial practices, does not actually represent the most of the core values of the Islamic texts, as far as I'm concerned. At least in a stance that isn't to some degree hypocritical. And they had told me, see, I don't even like that term, using jihadism in that way, because all over the Western media, these groups are always labeled as jihadist extremists, or jihadist rebels. So basically associating jihadism with war and bloodshed. Well, that's not what jihadism means. The term has been co-opted for that, basically. And I thought, really? What does it mean? I asked them. They told me that jihadism in the text of the Quran doesn't mean physical war. It means an internal war within oneself. A conflict of, say, cognitive dissonance that someone is trying to sort out, and an uncertainty within one's own true beliefs. So that's what the initial idea of jihad is. And I also briefly mentioned this in my scientific proposal videos when I was talking about my theory of religion as an analog for simplification of scientific knowledge, or sociotheology. How that, as far as I'm concerned, in the psychological context, well, that serves as a pretty good allegory for well, an identity crisis, or a morality crisis, or a spiritual crisis. It serves as a pretty good allegory for it. Or just any conflicting belief that one may hold, or beliefs, cognitive dissonance that someone may be having in terms of what they feel is, well, in terms of morality, what is ethically right or wrong. So, that was a very interesting discussion, and happy I had it. Oh, and yes, on that same night is when I did the interview with my good friend Sean Ferguson, musician, in the tunnel of Victoria Park Station and Dentonia Park. I had gone all the way there to, for that interview because I'd asked him if he wanted to do that. Oh, just a slight detour. So I've been meaning to talk about this, but it's been getting put off. Sean recently actually called me about, well, when I was first in the Vermont district of Laval. Oh, wait, no. Well, he had called me and then I called him back because I didn't answer the first time. And he told me a friend of his had recently died. Someone who he had been very close with and who had been involved with, I'm not going to say exactly what, but a certain project he'd been continuously pursuing, as well as a different a recording project they were doing. But they died of an overdose due to addiction. I think he said, and I hope he corrects me if I'm wrong about this, I think it was heroin. I think he said it was a heroin overdose. But nonetheless, severe drug overdose. Because they had dealt with, well, various trauma over the course of their life, and whilst being in the music industry. And from the sounds of what, obviously, as far as I'm concerned, all addiction, for the most part, stems from this. It was definitely done to absolve trauma. And, well, it got to a point of excessive use and, well, killed them. Firstly, that's horrendous that happened, but well, I know, obviously, this doesn't negate mine, but my addiction is nowhere near as severe as his friend's was. I'm a sugar addict, and I know how hard it is to beat addiction, not just from my own experience, but in terms of neuroscience. When addictions form pretty well, it's very, very hard to break the behavioral patterns, considering the fact that it's used, most often the psychological state uses it as a, well, not just a coping mechanism, it uses as an attempted absolvement of traumatic incidents, as a dopamine upticker, to give more of a sense of pleasure to, say, uptick in striatal activity and, well, an uptick for happiness, basically, the emotional response of joyfulness or happiness within the frontal cortex and the cingulate. But it's, well, it's incredibly hard to break. The sad reality is we know how most of this happens. You know why people become addicts, because because of psychological trauma and disorder, or if high exposure to, and this is not inherently with most substances, high exposure and high usage in a non-addictive sense can lead to physiological dependency, and obviously in that sense there are psychological factors as to why someone is getting to a point of overusage, as well as what causes it, I'd say, in the majority. Well, not majority, it is societal trauma. In this regard, I want to just take a minute to correct also, well, not correct, but elaborate on something I said in my introduction videos that I made whilst in Ottawa to myself, the second one. I don't remember it phrase for phrase, but I said something along the lines of, I'm tired of people not believing that, not realizing that all the societal detriment that has happened over the course of history, and cultural issues and disparities, and mass spread of psychological disorder, I'm tired of people not realizing or thinking that it didn't spread from one person centuries ago. What I meant by that was, obviously now, as far as I'm concerned, I was making it before I was cultivating my scientific theories or so. I was making a distinction somewhat between societal and interpersonal in people's lives, which, as far as I'm concerned, at the time, they both affected each other. But I thought, well, there's trauma that's caused by the societal, sociological, and then the interpersonal that affect each other, but they can technically be categorized as separate issues in how they form. That's completely wrong. As far as I'm concerned, you cannot have the societal without the interpersonal, and you can't have the interpersonal without the societal. It's a never-ending loop that keeps on feeding into each other. You can't have them without. What you do affects someone else in your interpersonal life, or someone you don't know on a more personable level. That affects someone else as they then form their interactions based on either judgment of how you interacted with them, or gain trauma, and then maybe in that regard, psychological disrupt, causing them to act in a certain way towards someone else, which then influences someone else, which then gets to the point of communal influence to some degree, and then it's perpetuated back into our sociological settings. And this goes for everything, especially in ideology and political identity, philosophy, what is acted upon, or in cultural practices as well. You can't separate those two. You can't separate the internal from the external. It's not possible. Both in terms of like your physical and metaphysical surroundings, your actual internal process in terms of your psychological state and your physiological state. You can't separate it. So that's what I meant more so by that. That someone long ago, and this plagues my mind a lot, whatever external things influenced them in a certain way, whether they thought that this was better to do, and critically thought that this was something that would be beneficial, or were indoctrinated into acting in the ways that they did that influenced their external community, or were traumatized. The world's issues spread from one person. Think about that. They did. One person long ago had to have... People, yes, are a collective as far as I'm concerned. But ideas, in terms of collectivism, I believe it helps create internal individualism. When we offer our individual ideas in a collectivist sense, to help a community and help ourselves. That is how human beings function, in a beneficial sense at least. Someone long ago had to have been the first for these ideas, that many of them that are, ideologically at least, destroying our world as far as I'm concerned. Someone had to. And that spread and caused into mass influence across, on a large scale, basically. So, that's what I meant by it. But I digress. I don't have any words to... All I can say is that's horrible, and I'm sorry to hear that, and it's a horrible thing that Sean's friend died. I don't... Other than what I just discussed, I don't know any other immediate solutions. Other than, obviously, for those who are suffering from addiction, to seek psychological help. And if you don't have the ability to talk to someone who has knowledge in psychology, or psychiatry more specifically, then self-educate about psychology and how it affects everyone. But anyway, so what's another story from Toronto? Oh yes. So about roughly this was the day before I slept at the nephew of the bike dealer's house. The day before that, I had made my way to the coast of Toronto, to the Scarborough waterfront. And I'd made my way to a beach that was down a ways by some plant. I think it was an energy plant of some kind for hydro work. Or maybe it was, no, I think actually it might have been a water treatment plant. Anyway, I'd made my way down there, and I decided, similar to what I'm doing now, today, to camp out on the beach. Now, when I was in Toronto, I didn't have a tent. I just had this, my thermally heated sleeping bag. And I pulled Timmy up onto the sand and parked them next to a tree, along with my gear that I had roped to the back of, well, this little platform that he had on him. And, well, I had, I did. Yeah, I had a lock. Yeah, I had a lock. It was in my coat pocket for when I was in Peterborough and Lakefield. Yeah, I had a chain lock that I tied Timmy up to a tree, and I just set up camp there, and I was going to wash some of my clothes in, well, Lake Ontario with soap, obviously, and I was also going to take a bath in Lake Ontario. And I attempted to do that, and it was getting dark at this point. And I was able to wash my clothes, but when I tried going in, and I had my underwear on because there were some people on the beach, not many, but there were those here and there lighting bonfires. I went in, and then I was like, nope, and immediately went out because it was freezing. And I tried again the next day. But that night, seeing as I was now wet and cold, I saw that there were some people maybe roughly in their mid to early 20s having a bonfire just down a ways from me. So I walked towards them just to ask, hey, do you mind if I warmed up by your fire? And I asked them, and they were like, oh, sure, go right ahead. And I just stood there and thanked them, and they were just having a conversation. I forget what they were talking about. But they also brought a makeshift, well, it might have been, well, they brought a mini barbecue with them. They were barbecuing chicken on it, tandoori chicken. It was spiced with tandoori masala, I believe, as well as chili flakes. And they gave it to everyone at the fire, and then the cook offered me some, and they're like, here you go. It's for you. And I was like, wow, thank you. And I ate it, and it was goddamn delicious. It was, yeah, but that was the first time I believe I've ever had tandoori chicken. And, well, yeah, it was incredible. And they offered me some more as well after I was done, and I was, again, like, thank you. And after a while, I warmed up enough, but then they said as I was getting later into the night that, okay, bro, we don't want to be rude or anything, but we're just gonna have some time for ourselves now, if that's all right. No disrespect to you. It's just like we're here for us and things of the sort. So, but no disrespect. And I was like, oh, that's all right. Absolutely, and thank you for letting me warm up. So I left and went back to my campsite, and it wasn't cold anymore. I warmed up enough, and I slept the night on the beach, and it was very peaceful. For any homeless in Toronto, I'll mention, if you can get to any of the beaches just to sleep, I highly recommend you do so. To some degree as well, in the hot summer, the sand, I think, would be a lot warmer than probably maybe just as warm as the grates in Toronto, or the subway heating, well, the heating systems that emit the heated air from the subway ventilation, because of, well, the baking hot sun that beats onto them throughout the day. So I'd recommend that. We had 55. So, and then the next day I was able to actually take a bath in the lake with some shampoo that a friend of mine had given me. And yeah. And then that day I also got sunburn across my legs, as I decided I didn't use a towel, and I didn't have one. And I laid in the sun, and little did I know that would cause sunburn across my legs. I was also, interesting that I was wearing these exact ripped jeans. But anyway. So, there's that. What's another? Ant. What's another story from Toronto and then moving on from that. This one for that friend who I was going to see the night that I met the bike dealer. I had initially called them, because I hadn't heard from them in a while, earlier in the day, to tell them that, well, I'm basically leaving Toronto, and I'm homeless, and well, I can't stay here anymore. And they had called me back, and we had discussed it, and they asked why, and I further elaborated, and I talked about the issues with my home life. They told me about the issues with theirs. And after I'd met them down at the beach, they had invited me back to their place. And well, they had a friend there, and their house, they live in a very impoverished area. And their house was not in the greatest condition as far as I'm concerned. But obviously, it matters nothing to them as a person. That matters. That doesn't determine at all them as a person as far as I'm concerned. Sadly, there are many people who would think that. And, well, we just all sat and talked, and then later in the night, well, we sort of cuddled up together. And then another day when I had gone back there, just to hang out with them solely, same thing. And we briefly just discussed about life. And I told them that I had a crush on them when we were when I was still in school with them, because I shared a class with them. And I'd known them briefly. I'd known them more as an acquaintance over the last probably 2 years by that point. And, well, yeah, I just thought I should tell that to them before leaving. And they had said that they had a feeling of it, that they thought I had a crush on them, and I was romantically interested in them. And I said I wish I had asked you out on a date when I was actually in school, or before I had made the decision to leave. And I apologize for that. But, well, oh well. And we then got further into discussions about, well, when I had talked about my existential morality crisis. They told me about issues, issues of people they've dealt with over life, because they were, well, sadly they were abused when they were younger. And, well, obviously that left heavy trauma. But they had initially, actually, when I was at their house, and also when we were down by the beach for Victoria Day, we were discussing how sexually they're more into bondage. They're more of a masochist, and I had personally said, well, I'm more into softcore practices, and I'm not very I'm obviously sexually promiscuous, just as they were, because they were also involved with sex work. But I'm more into what would be considered in sex work culture more so vanilla acts. I'm not personally into or highly aroused by more rougher practices. I can be, but not the majority. And they were talking about how I will at some point convert you if we were to ever hook up. And I was like, I highly doubt that. They were like, no, you'll wait and see. And then before leaving the city, actually, I had asked them if, because they had said, well, at some point, they phrased it exactly like this: if you ever have the balls to do so, well, we can hook up at some point. And I just let that be, and thought, well, that'd be nice, but if I was to ever come back to the city once I'd left. But then I figured 2 days or so before I was going to leave the city, I texted them and asked, you know what, would you be up to hook up for a night? And because I thought, well, if I may never be coming back to the city, then there is no time like the present. And they were like, sure. But I made it clear that only if you're comfortable with it. I don't want you to feel pressured in any way into engaging sexually unless you're comfortable with it. And well, at first they were like, no, I understand. And it's obviously I'm fine with it. But that day, something else happened at their house, and they decided, I'm sorry, but I'm in a bit too much of a angered mood to hook up today. And I was like, that's alright. Because I had also gotten sunburn it's the same day that I had gotten bathed in the lake. Sunburn across my legs, and I'd actually said if we were going to do anything more sexual, it would be alright if we did certain positions rather than certain other ones, because of the burning. And they weren't even wanting really to do much physical, well, intensively sexual physical things. And I then responded, yeah, that's alright. And then I was also like, it's probably a better idea to just not do it anyway. And I then asked what, if you don't mind me asking, what happened? Do you want to talk about what happened? And believe we actually ended up getting into that, because they didn't respond to me. And then I called them again before leaving the city, just to say goodbye in case anything happened to me as I was leaving. But, well, that was that. It's interesting in regards to this, because moments where I've self-reflected on how, and I've talked about this here and there in various videos about my regrets of the past, especially when I was in regards to anyway, in regards to my first romantic relationship and how I was later on, after the relationship had ended and I was friends with the person, how I was very, I was a terrible friend to them and their partner. I was manipulative very much, and I was sexually encroaching to them, and romantically as well, to them and their partner at the time of our friendship. And at the time, we were all very clearly exploring our sexualities and, well, understanding things, or trying to better understand, well, what we enjoyed in terms of sexual pleasure and what we were attracted to and our romantic interests. And I, obviously, as far as I'm concerned, this is part of, I guess, my morality crisis, and when I reflect back on this, I had held the basic, well, not as in-depth as they are now, but most of the similar ideologies that I hold now, basically, as well as in relation to altruism and non-authoritarianism, and also, well, what would be the word? Well, empathic, well, obviously, empathy, of course. I never wanted to cause them any harm. I think back, because I held, it was major cognitive dissonance. I had held ideals of not being performative in terms of your moral stances, and also not overtly caring about other people's perceptions of you to a problematic extent where you were conforming to appease external viewpoints. And yet, even though I had this basic idea, that's exactly what I did with those friends of mine. And I know why, but I still ask, well, and I still ask it because it still persists to this day. I know why I did this. Psychologically, when I psychoanalyze myself and self-reflect, I know why I did this. but I still technically I didn't want to. Because it's not like when I was younger, I was as if I didn't truly believe these things. I did. At least I thought I did. But I guess, well, I guess really when people desire something so much, morality will at points go out the window. Or you can't get rid of your morals, but your understanding of morality will shift to convincing yourself that you believe in this and act in this way, but really you turn more of a blind eye to things that would be detrimental to psychologically what you truly want. I don't know. So, well, back to Toronto. Another story, I guess, would be is when I was actually the day that I was driving out of the city, I had taken a route along Kingston Road and was driving out towards Oshawa. And I pulled up at a gas station, and the attendant said that they thought my bike was nice. I thought, said, thank you. And when I was getting to the edge of Oshawa, going out as I looked on the map, I was going to take a road that would take me up to Stouffville. Stouffville, which it shares a name, has the second part to its name, but Stouffville, Ontario, which is a moderately sized town. And as I was getting ready to go, and this was nightfall had come. I wanted to leave earlier, but I had gone back to my family's house earlier in the day, and I got into a massive fight with one of my parents. But, well, time went on, and I left at night at around 9:30, 10 p.m. at night. And I had a moment where I stopped at a little dimly lit intersection. And this was getting to the outskirts of Oshawa, so getting into the countryside with rural fields of vegetables, wheat, and just scattered houses. And I had a moment where I thought, well, you do this, and you have a world of possibilities that are coming your way, and a lot of them are probably not very favorable. And I won't say I had a moment of doubt, because I was still very much going through with it. But in relation to, I obviously was experiencing conscious apathy, as far as I'm concerned. And I thought, I don't really know how to describe how I felt. I felt like I was about to cross a boundary that I'd never crossed before in my life. And trust me, I don't want this to sound overly egotistical. It is going to, but I don't mean it in a I'm special type of way. It's fair to say, and looking back on my life, even from a very young age, I have, in terms of what I've done, and in terms of my research of the world, and just in my interpersonal life and my home life, from all the years I've been alive, and how I would speak so much to, let's just say, in a ageist authoritarian cultural dynamic that has pervaded most of the world, of, well, authoritarian parents, or parents being granted sole authority in a legal judicial system in most societies over their children's rights to what they're able to do. I've pushed a lot of boundaries in my life before. I have. I've obviously done things without my parents' knowledge, even when I was living with them. But even with their knowledge, I was able to negotiate with them and actually work in a collective way over years to try and come to provide reason for why I should be granted this privilege. But when I was going to leave the bounds of the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, I felt like, despite all my research of the world, nothing was going to obviously truly prepare me for what I would experience. Because I thought I really will be, for at least a long period anyway, physically and externally, metaphysically, all alone. Now, as far as I'm concerned, we're all psychologically, internally alone. Theory of interactive loneliness, which is the cause for our pro-social behavior. But, no, that's just the only way I can describe it. But, after a while, I turned the nodule for the chamber to allow the gas flow from the tank into the engine. Just pedaled a bit, and turned the throttle on Timmy, and we rode off towards Stouffville. But that night, one of my bungee cords snapped, because apparently the bungee cord's holding my gear down at the back, because apparently the fucking tire was rubbing against it, and obviously it was eroding it away, snapping the sinews and fibers of the fucking cord, and it snapped on the road in the dark. So I pulled off to the side of what was close to a golf course. Pulled off, and for the night, I slept in, oh my god, excuse me. I slept in a grazed off cornfield that had been chopped down for the night, my sleeping bag, in the middle of nowhere. I hooked Timmy up to a sign on the side of the road. I forget what it said. Might have actually been like giving me the kilometers, the amount of kilometers to get to Stouffville. So I hooked them up and slept the night, and it was quiet. Well, it's a little eerily quiet, but it's quiet. And then the next day I made my way into Stouffville. And when I got there, I ate at a bakery. And when I was leaving that bakery, there was an older person, an elder, who was with, I think, their spouse or their partner. And okay. I think someone may have just summoned the Kraken of Prairie Server. I have no clue. Anyway. When I was leaving the bakery, this older person, they looked at me and my bike and they said to me, "There's a story behind that." And I was like, "Yeah, technically there is." And I told them I was initially from Toronto, but we didn't get into much discussion about it, and I just said I'm headed towards, Peterborough, Ontario. And then I went on my way out of Stouffville. And then for the next few nights, I slept at an extended relative of mine's place, because they had invited me there to just stay there instead of sleeping outside for the next night or so. And I thank them for that. They later were one of the people who also betrayed my trust. But I thank them for that. And stayed there for 2 days because it started raining the next day. And then their spouse fixed up something on Timmy, and it was to do with a spark plug that was causing me issues. And then I went on my way. And then on my way to Port, because to get to Peterborough, I was taking major road routes and then going off of some side roads. And on my way there, I didn't fill up on gas when I left their house, and I got maybe 20 to 25 minutes away from where they live, and I broke down on the side of the road, and I was going. That's how I would always know if Timmy was about to die and I didn't have gas. Oh, the joy of joys when that would happen. I'd just be going along steadily fine, and then I'd just hear So I was like, fuck. And it wasn't a very busy road, and this was in broad daylight, and I walked up beside a ranch, it looked to be, a horse ranch. And it was very, very, well, it looked to be at the very least of upper middle class residence in terms of its maintenance. And it might have also been an equestrian, training place. It might have been someone who offered horse equestrian lessons. But I tried, so they had a gate, and it had an intercom. And I tried ringing the intercom, and I was like, hello, is anyone there? And I would just like to have some gas, just to fill up my tank. It only takes about a liter of gas, and I already have 2-stroke oil, because it was one of those where it's a liter of gas, and then like 1% 2-stroke oil to help lubricate, because it didn't have a lubrication mechanism for the engine. So I tried calling for someone, no one answered, and then I hit a button on the intercom out of curiosity, and the gate started opening. And I was like, okay. And then I walked in, and then the gate started slowly closing. And I was like, well, I'm in here now. I could get out, obviously. It was not a high gate, and there was also a part that was open, so I could get out. But I walked through the property and started calling, hello, hello, anyone here? And the garage was open. It was a big wooden garage. I didn't see anyone in there. And I walked all the way up to the house there, which was very, 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 very nice and very well maintained. Very highly expensive. And there was a dog that started barking from within the house, but no one answered. And I also tried knocking on the door. No one answered, so clearly no one was home. And I just sort of stood there for a minute in the driveway, just thinking, what am I going to do? And I was also staring at the horses that were out in their pens, going around. And I eventually decided, okay, well, I'm gonna have to walk or pedal to me the rest of the way till I reach a gas station. Now, Timmy was not very good with being pedaled, I'll say. It was since the bike had been converted into a small motorized vehicle, and the thing is, as I mentioned in my Peterborough videos, when I was demonstrating Timmy at the end of the second part, when I was showing how their mechanisms worked. It didn't have a standard ignition. It didn't have a key. Like, Timmy didn't have a key, and the bike basically, how the dealer had designed it in relation, I guess, to the spark plug and the throttle, you had to actually pedal, the pedals a bit to get, like, the engine going, and then pull the throttle, and then the spark plug would ignite and kick off, and it would actually start, the motor. So that's how Timmy worked. But once it was designed that way, it's very clear that he was not meant to be pedaled after being converted into this motorized vehicle, with a small lawnmower engine and all the rest. Clearly, the pedals were now just for, like, the ignition. Just pedal it to get the ignition going and then pull the throttle. So I walked up the road a bit and how I got out of the ranch was I jumped over this little side of the fence that had an opening, and where I could kind of squeeze through it, but I ended up having to, like, kind of tuck myself over a bit, like the side that it was on. And then I got my bag over, and then, well, I just walked around and parked Timmy right at where the gate was, and I just hit the same button that I hit and slowly opened, and then I walked him out, and it slowly closed. And I was like, oh, sorry. If anyone caught me on security cameras, well, I hope you didn't call the police for that. Sorry about that. I walked up the road a bit, and then, thankfully, someone pulled into their another neighboring house pulled into their driveway, and they said, do you need a hand? And I was like, yes, I just need literally 1 liter of gas for my tank here. And they're like, 1 liter of gas? Okay, I'll go up to my garage here and see if I have any. And so they were just like, just wait here a minute. And I waited about 2 minutes, and they came back down, and they said, okay, here you go. I have a funnel here. You want me to help you pour it in? And I was like, okay, thank you. And so we poured it in. I got filled up. And then they offered me some homemade pizza. Yeah, they literally had brought some in their truck. They're like, here, where are you headed to? And I was like, I'm going to Port Perry first, which is a smaller city that's on the way to Peterborough. And then I'll be headed to Peterborough. They're like, oh, wow, long distance, and well, for this vehicle. And I was like, here, have some, if you need some food, here's some homemade pizza that me and my husband made. I was like, oh, well, thank you so much. And I ate that when I got to Port Perry. And so I got Timmy working again, and we went on our way. And then we reached Port Perry. Now, when I got there, when I was getting into Port Perry, I'd started noticing some issues with Timmy's back tire. And basically, I'd stopped at some mechanic stores and asked, is there any way you can maybe take a look at this and give me an understanding of it? And they said, I think they said, what did they say? Something to do with the treads, like that it was decompressing, that like, I don't remember specifically what they said, but they said, well, you're gonna have to try and get this looked at probably by like a general bike mechanic. But I asked, should it cause me a problem? They were like, no, probably shouldn't cause you any issues. Obviously, I guess I should have asked a bike mechanic, but well, no, they just weren't as accurate with their guess. And so, okay, my leg is, okay, hold on a second, switch positions. Can you see my face if I go like, actually, you know what, here, I'm gonna go like this. Ow. My foot is sore from being in that position. Like this. Okay, so that helped. So basically, that's a bit of foreshadowing for what's to come. So for now, the tire was fine, but anyway, I got into Port Perry, and I pulled into the gas station. Just, I think I was just asking, is there any place to, because I need more gas, because my tank only lasted me about 3 hours or so, depending on how much I used it. So I asked, is there a place that I could fill up on gas? And they said it was a few ways down the road, and there were some kids playing just on the road that was beside this little shop. And then they came running into the shop because it's clear that they knew the mechanic in there, or they might have been their children or just local neighborhood kids that were allowed to play in the area. And they saw my motorized bike and they asked, "Whoa, where'd you get that?" And I was like, "Oh, well, bought it from a dealer in Toronto." And then one of the younger kids asked, "Did you run away?" And I didn't. This isn't truthful. Obviously, I did not run away from anything. In terms of on a psychological basis for issues I'd been dealing with, I didn't run from them as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't want to go into the whole. At the moment, I didn't want to go into the whole like very complex and convoluted details of why I decided to leave Toronto. And so I just sort of said to them, something of the sort, I guess you could say. And then I was like, "Have a nice day." And I drove off down the road towards the downtown area of Port Perry, where I ate. And I was initially going to try and maybe stay at a hotel that was also a piano bar in the lower half for the night, but apparently they were all booked up. And I was like, shit. Well, given the time of day, because it was about maybe 4 or 5 p.m. at that point and the sun was still out, I thought, okay, what are my options here? I could try to stay in the city for the night and just find a patch to sleep. Yeah, okay, an hour and 38 minutes for this bit. And the other option was that I just continue on through Port Perry and try and make it just straight to Peterborough. And I inevitably opted for that one. So I drove out across the bridge that was over, I don't remember what river it was, but it's the one that Port Perry is located beside. Drove across the bridge and just went through the countryside, making my way along, following this was going to take me to an area that was close to Peterborough, and then I would have to make some divots here and there. And so I just drove for the rest of the day on, well, that road. And then when I got closer to Peterborough, as it was getting towards dusk, I asked some locals in the area, "Hey, can you direct me just the routes through these back roads to Peterborough?" And they would tell me, "Okay, yes, go here, make a right, make a left, and then make another right, go straight," which I did. And it was getting, and on these back roads, it was starting to get very dark, and I was like, well, shit. This is not ideal. And so I turned on my little, I had rigged up onto me a little, flashlight that I'd used, what is it? Acrylic tape. I'd used acrylic tape to tie this flashlight onto my motorized bicycle as basically just a headlight. And it worked, but it would flicker at points, and I would have to smack it to make it work. Because I think the batteries were coming loose in it because of all the shaking from driving. And so I drove through the night, and I got into Peterborough at around, I think, 11 p.m. And it was bustling in the downtown area when I went through it. and I was attracting a lot of attention because, well, Timmy was rather loud. He was a rather loud Thank you very much. Come on. Just... Okay. Anyway, rather loud child. And I tried that night staying in some of the more mega corporate hotel branches that were actually in... Of course you fall again. Lord alive. Okay, you gonna stay up like that? Oh, okay, maybe you'll stay like that. Please. Okay. I tried staying in some of the more larger hotel branches that were in the city. Given the height of my morality crisis at that point, I wasn't, well, making a lot of hypocritical decisions, still do, but, well, anyway, I just asked, hey, I'd like to know the price of the rooms for the night, and the cheapest, I think, was 100 something, and I was like, okay, just for the night. And they asked, how are you paying? And I said, is cash alright? And they were like, nope, we do not accept physical currency anymore, in accordance with a new law that has been put in place by the Ontario government, which is absolutely a direct attack on the homeless, as far as I'm concerned. That we cannot accept physical cash anymore, and we also don't, because in terms of possible fraud, or something along those lines was their excuse, and we also don't take debit cards. The card that I have. We only accept credit. Only credit cards to pay for rooms. And on top of that, I didn't even, according to them, have the proper ID. In accordance with the new laws put in place, you can't actually use health cards, provincial health cards, as identification because of the high risk of fraudulency. Because apparently, health cards in Canada, health cards are the easiest identification card to forge. But again, direct attack on the homeless, as far as I'm concerned. It's not for any sort of safety precautions. What safe? It's unless it's to protect fucking. Well, yeah, it would be, I guess, in that regard, to protect the fucking corporation from potentially being involved with criminal activity, or just drawing in so-called potential dangers because people just assume that homeless are dangerous. And so I was like, do you by chance know of any hotels or motels in the city that don't have policies in place that are in line with that law? Because it's apparently for hotels more so, but certain ones have privileges, or there's an exemption for where they don't need to follow that regulation. They're like, you can try the Motel 6,
that's down a ways on this end of the city. And I was like, okay, all right. And I went there and I asked the reception, by chance, can I book a room? Or can I rent a room for the night? And they were like, nope, same exact rules. And so I went outside of the motel and I looked into their backyard. And because they had a backyard property where people would mainly, I guess, just go to relax, who were staying there. And I went in again and asked, hey, out of curiosity, how often do people go into your backyard area of the property? They were like, no, not terribly often, only if, say, have a cigarette, or maybe drink some morning coffee. I was like, great, thank you. Have a good night. So I slept the night in the backyard, and, well, got eaten alive by mosquitoes. And I was promptly kicked off in the morning. And very clearly the receptionist who did so had some prejudice towards, some classist prejudice towards those without housing. They're very just monotone and more direct when they came out to they literally came out to take the trash, and I saw them as I was waking up out of my sleeping bag, and they were like, they didn't even look at me when they said, they were like, you can't sleep on the property, it's private property. And I was like, sorry. And then I started packing up, and then they came back out and was like, let's go, chop chop, if you don't leave in about 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. I was like, sorry again. And so I gathered what I could and walked out to the sidewalk in front of the motel, which is not technically their property, so, well, I was free to be on it as long as I wanted. And, well, they didn't end up calling the police. And then that morning I recorded my Peterborough videos, and then ate at the restaurant where I recorded them at. Then, what else? Oh, yes, and that same day, yes, I made another video, a shorter video, called, well, me making it to Lakefield, Ontario, where said tire that was causing a bit of an issue with Timmy at the back end, as I was going along the, technically, I guess, a highway. It was not a major roadway that could have been counted as a highway. When I was going along the side of it, I was keeping to the dirt side of it, on the gravel. As I was about halfway to Lakefield, I hear and along the side of the fucking gravel, and I started, like, Timmy started shaking, and I was like, fucking hell, what was that? And I stop and look, and the trim of the tire had burst, and it deflated, and I was like, that is marvelous. So I called some tow truck services, got one out there who was able to drive me into Lakefield, but they said there wasn't any mechanics that'd probably be open or who could really fix that. I was like, it's alright, just please put me in Lakefield. That's it. And so, long story short, one of my relatives' spouses, actually, who lived in the area, came to pick me up because I had called them. And they offered to actually fix up Timmy for me as best they could, which they did, while I was staying at the cottage. And so I stayed at, once I got to the village of Crow's Landing, Ontario, where the cottage was located, I had decided that I was going to, see if I could stay there or around that area for most of the summer while I tried to gain employment before heading up to Ottawa, Ontario. Which is what I did. I was allowed to stay in the cottage. It's a shared cottage between my extended relatives, just the whole family. I was allowed to stay there for the summer, for 4 months. And whilst up there, don't you fall again. Good. Whilst up there, I had spent the first month, well, no, I spent the last, I spent the I'd spent the mid to late sections of June, if I'm recalling correctly, searching for employment in the local areas. Once I got Timmy back, I had barely any resumes that I had printed off before leaving Toronto, but with what I had left, I had put it at various places. When I had gone into Norwood, the town of Norwood, I had asked around when I would get groceries, if places were hiring. Some took down my number and said they'd call me back, or some took my resume and said they may call me back. It didn't happen. Then I went into Lakefield and Peterborough one day again to try and, the day before that I had gone into Warsaw, the village of Warsaw, to gather some groceries, and I had hitchhiked into there because Timmy was being repaired and I needed some food. Interestingly enough, in that regard, when I was hitchhiking back out of the village towards Crow's Landing, a very nice person picked me up with their child, and they said, "You need a ride somewhere? Because it looks like you have a lot of items." And I was like, "Yep, I do, if you don't mind." And so many people have asked when I've been hitchhiking, "You're not a serial killer, are you? Or are you a serial killer?" Like, some of them obviously sarcastic, like in a comedic sense. Others, it seemed like with a touch of genuineness in terms of a sincere question. Obviously, I would say no. Firstly, if I was the rare few psychopaths that are murderers, if I was a serial murderer, do you actually think I would admit to that? If you're picking me up, do you really think I would admit to that when asked? So, yeah, that was interesting, but we talked, and I told them obviously why I was up here, and they were very nice, and they lived in the local area, and I thought about maybe dropping by and giving them a visit where they said their house was before leaving, but, well, that didn't end up happening. And, well, anyway, when I had gotten Timmy repaired, as well repaired as he could be, given the condition he was in, I had gone out one day to go into Peterborough to see about buying certain necessities and, well, asking about jobs. And funnily enough, on this day, I put my resume at the restaurant job at the restaurant that was in the village of McCracken's Landing, that I would later get more towards the end of my stay at the cottage, and worked there for a period of a month and a half to 2 months. But I'll talk about that in a bit. But you bastards never called me back. Damn you. I had to call them back nearly a month later. But anyway, so I dropped it with them, and then I went off. I went on some back roads to try and to a campsite where I dropped my resume just in a door slot because no one was there, and then ended up going all the way around, circling to a rural intersection that took me to Lakefield and then into Peterborough. And I stayed, and when I got to Peterborough, it was dark. So the things that I wanted to get, I wasn't going to be able to do because, well, places were closed. And so I stopped at a small cafe restaurant that was open till about, I think, 2 in the morning, and ate something small and just thought about stuff. And at around 12 o'clock midnight, I thought, okay, it's getting late. I don't have my sleeping gear with me, obviously. So I'm gonna head back now to Crow's Landing. Try to head back in the dark. And it was a colder night, and I didn't have my coat with me. I had just my sweatshirt. And I was also dissociating quite a bit. My somatoform dissociation was acting up. And I've told this story before in the Before Leaving the Cottage videos of what was technically still, well, yeah, I'm still counting it as the most terrifying experience of my life, technically. Okay, I'm not going to really go into this one because I've already talked about it. If you want more information on it, go watch Before Leaving the Cottage Part 3. But I thought I saw something, don't know what it was, lumbering out in the dark from the side of a dirt road, like only a few inches from me. I don't know what it was, if it was even real, if it was there. And I screamed when I saw it, because I only saw its torso, what looked to be arms, legs, and I didn't see its head, but I saw a bit of its body. It looked like a white thing. I want to say an animal, just something. And I accelerated the throttle to the max on Timmy, and I had a strobe light, a little strobe light attached to him, and it was falling off, and I was trying to adjust it before that on the drive, but now it come off into my hand, and I swung back around to just look, and the light was flashing, and I thought whatever this thing was chasing me, and it was right behind me. And so again I screamed, and I just pulled the throttle to the max that it could go right in the middle of the road, and I didn't care, like, there was no cars coming, so I just went straight whipping through the middle of the road, trying to get to, I thought I would turn off to the intersection to the village of Warsaw, if I could. But I tried to make that turn, and then I skidded and nearly fell off my... Well, not... Almost fell off my bike, but not quite, and then I was able to regain the balance, and I was like, nope, we're not making that turn, I guess, just keep going straight. And then I broke down in between a farmhouse and an old farm with very dim lighting, and I took out my switchblade, because I had to get off, and I was like, no, don't, because I didn't want it to break down, obviously, because I was running out of gas. And I called the police to basically just take me back to the cottage for the night. And the dispatcher initially wasn't going to send anyone. I was like, no, fucking send someone, please. I didn't want to be alone there. So I chained up my bike to a pole in the middle of nowhere. They took me back to the village. I thanked them, and then the next day I walked out, got a tow truck to drive me out to where my bike was, and then, well, did some errands in Lakefield, and then came back to the cottage. And it was around that time that Timmy was wearing down. The repairs weren't gonna... It was becoming apparent that the repairs weren't gonna do very much. And so, basically, I opted to buy a golf cart. And there was a dealer for a golf cart at a farm just outside of the town of Norwood. And Timmy, with his dying breath, took one last ride with me. And this is another story. As I was going out to get no. This was this was the same day. Yeah, this was the same day. As I was going to get the golf cart with Timmy, some two country fellas, and I say that because, okay, I don't mean this in a sort of offensive way, but these two they were the most stereotypical rural country Canadians that I had ever met. They lived on a small house. They had pickup trucks, the four-wheelers. They had dirt buggies. They had gas tanks all over the place. And one of them was wearing a plaid shirt, and the other was, I think, just wearing just a hoodie. And they had ripped jeans. They had paint stains all over them. They were smoking cigarettes, and I had broke down, like, because I ran out of gas, because my gas tank was leaking vigorously. Dust. And basically, I broke down, like, just outside of their house, and they came out and was like, whoa, what do you got here? And they had a very, very thick rural Ontarian accent, and they're like, whoa, I'd like to get me one of these. It's very, well, how fast can you, what's the kilometer range on this thing? And I was like, I honestly don't know, but I've broken down, all I need is some gas. I'm looking to sell it. I was thinking of giving it to the dealer who had agreed to sell me, well, a golf cart outside of Norwood. And they're like, damn, well, we'd like to help. How can we help you? And I was like, well, do you have gas? Possibly just some gas that could fill it up. And they gave me some gas, and they're like, let us know, like, how it goes with it once you get the golf cart. And I was like, all right, if I see you again, and thank you so much. And they were like, we want to watch this. We want to watch this thing go, like, how it works. And so I showed them, like, obviously you use the pedals to ignite the ignition, and it took me a minute to get going because I didn't turn the chamber well enough. Like, I didn't turn the actual valve to let the gas go in, and so it was like, third time's the charm because I did it 3 times, then I was like, and I sped off and I waved from behind. So I got to the farm, and when I got to the farm, like, Timmy was on his last legs. Like, the tank was leaking all over my leg, going through along the country road in broad daylight, the air, and like, its spark plug was having issues again, somewhat, and it was just, Timmy was like, he was minutes from just completely falling apart, I'm pretty sure. And I got there and I waited for the dealer to show up, and they eventually did. And I asked if they wanted to purchase my bike. They're like, how much do you want for it? And I was like, well, if you can give me like just, I think I said 200, but eventually I was just like, you know what, you can just have it. I didn't pester with that. But don't fall. Okay. But anyway, so I purchased Trudy, my not so trusty golf cart, and I got a ride with the dealer in their trailer back to Crow's Landing, and they had asked me where I initially came from, and well, Timmy was left on the farm, and I have no clue if he's still there to this day, but well, hope you're enjoying it, Timmy. I miss you. But they asked me where I'd come from, and I said Toronto initially, and then they had talked to me about how they had taught in South Korea for a bit. They had taught English in, I forget if they said either Busan or Seoul. Might have been Busan. But they had talked about their experiences with traveling. And then they showed me just the ins and outs of the golf carts and the charging amenities for it and all that. And I had tried it out and it worked. But I soon found how unreliable Trudy was. She was an electric golf cart, and well, when she was running low on battery, she was slower than a slug. Like, God, I had gone so many times I broke down with her, and I either had to push her, or some points I would call a tow truck to help, like, actually get me to where I need to go, back to Crow's. Most often it was back to Crow's Landing. This would take at least 4 hours for her to charge. And so one day when I went into Norwood to get some groceries, I was driving down the same road that I had met the country fellas on, and they came out, and I was going, and this was a fast pace because Trudy had charge, and so it was relatively fast enough, and I was driving along the side of the road, and they came out, and I got past the property a bit, and they came out on a fucking dirt buggy. They came out on a dirt mobile, speeding down the road towards me, and I heard like this noise coming up, like, and I was like, look back, and I heard this yelling, and it was these guys going, woohoo, woohoo, he got it, And God, no, I mean it. They were incredibly nice. They were incredibly very nice people. But my God, were they the most stereotypical rural Canadians ever. And they're like, hey, how much you pay for it? And I was like, $3,000. And they're like, wow. Did the dealer, like, over there, do they have the bike? What'd you do with the bike? And I was like, well, I just gave it to them. If you want to go purchase it, they're out in believe the county's called Hastings. They're out a ways from Norwood, so you just have to go there to ask them. They're like, damn, I wish you luck with this, man. Hope this gets you where you need to get to. I was like, I hope it does as well. And they're like, and then they turned back around on their dirt buggy and they're like, see you around. And I was like, have a nice day. And I never saw them again. Basically, got into Norwood, did my groceries, and as I was coming back, a fucking course Trudy was dying. And God. But thankfully, someone in Norwood had asked me about the golf cart. Like, do you need a ride? Do you need a hand getting back? Because that's like, because I'm actually impressed with how much I conserved the battery power on Trudy. So most average, apparently, because I did research on this, most average electric golf carts or electric off-road vehicles, they can run for maybe an hour or so, and then they'd have to be recharged. Well, Norwood on Trudy was at least an hour and a half to 2 hours away. And going into Lakefield, when I did, the few times that I did on Trudy, that's at least, on Trudy, it's 2 hours to 2.5 hours to maybe even 3 hours away. And I made her last at least into the damn towns and villages, and halfway back most times, without her breaking down. I conserved the power by not putting the pedal to the max. Like, I wasn't, like, at points I would just lightly put pressure on the pedal to drive, because I didn't need to go fast. I was in no rush most times. And so I conserved it by doing that, and also just stopping at points to take breaks along the side of the road and not use up her energy. But someone in Norwood, once I made my way out of Norwood again that day, well, they were driving by and like they saw me needing their help, as I initially refused, and they're like, yeah, you know what, I would appreciate that. So anyway, I eventually, as I've talked about, whilst I was at Crow's Landing, I got a job working for a landscaping company, a small business landscaping company that owned the marketplace. The owners of that company were now the marketplace owners for a store that was the main shopping store and restaurant in Crow's Landing. But it was under repairs at the time. They were also having some issues with the city of Peterborough and the county because, well, it seems that a health inspector or a maintenance inspector had a bit of a vendetta against them. It was a bit more spiteful. And, well, that caused problems. But so, I got a job with them. And it's very interesting work. The first day I was with them, we were hauling brush off. We were working on very wealthy properties. Because there had been a storm that blew through the area that knocked down so many trees and was making ample work for them. And we were tasked with just hauling brush and chopping them up in a wood chipper. And basically, what's it? Actually, there's a few from the landscaping company. I've already talked about how insecure and very egotistical the employers were, who I began having issues. I only worked there for 2 weeks, and then I quit because I'd had enough of their nonsense as far as I'm concerned. I don't hold any... I don't have any spite against them, but I don't condone... I don't condone many of their shitty, borderline, I would call more falling rightist, right-wing ideals. Well, they were very insecure. Both employers of the company. And anyway, trying to pick a story. Oh yeah, they had a barge, apparently they had purchased, and they had branded accordingly with their company. And we had taken it out to use on the various islands on the lake of the area. And we were going out and we had to haul various, logs, chop down logs, onto them and bring them back to our stationary headquarters in Crow's Landing. But we had parked it on the opposite end of the lake, a truck. We had parked a truck that I had gone with one of the employers in to gather some equipment, and also on the daily to just park it there so that we could take the barge and bring the logs back to the truck, and then just load up the truck with the logs. And so, yeah. And toxic masculinity galore. My employer, at points I remember once I would wear a backpack with my things in it whilst doing the work. It wasn't overly disruptive as far as I'm concerned. And sometimes I would just forget because, they would just say, Cam, get over here and do this and do that. So I would do what they said and try and help in what way I could. And then I remember one day when we were working, one of my employers was just like, Cam, if you don't get rid of that fucking backpack, I'm going to throw it in the lake. All right. Aggressive threats much. So I just set it down. And then one day, remember, I had decided, because I wanted to experience this, it was starting to rain. And one of them warned me, because we were going on the barge across the lake, that, see that blurry haze over there? That's a wall of rain, man. And I was like, you want to come inside, the cockpit of the barge? And I was like, no, I'm alright, I'll just sit out here and deal with it. And I just sat out in the rain and, yeah, just experienced the cold and the rush of it against my face as we were getting to our destination. And about 3 days before I quit, and this was one of the tipping factors. So often these employers would, they contradict themselves constantly. And also, they So many issues. They tell me to do one thing, and then they tell me to do another, and then they get angry for me not doing the other thing that they said once I then did the other thing that they wanted me to do. Makes sense? Nope. So on this island where there was extensive damage from the storm, so many trees that had fallen down, I was not permitted to use the chainsaws, gas or electric. And they tell me to go help haul brush, put it into the wood chipper with one of the workers, which I did. But when we weren't doing that, and the worker went off to do other tasks, and there was still ample tree damage and brush that was connected still to the trees as branches that I thought needed to be pulled off so that we could actually, get these larger trees out of the way. Seeing as I wasn't permitted to use the saws, I grabbed an axe and did it myself by hand. I cut down at least 6 or 7 large branches on this major tree that had fallen on the island. And I then would haul said tree branches, which I did, up to the top of this one little crest of a rock. Haul it up so that it can actually be broken down further by the wood chipper. You're welcome for that if you're watching this. And obviously my efforts went unrecognized as far as I'm concerned, and one of the workers was like, "Cam, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm chopping down a tree." And they were like, "Cool, come over here and actually help us with this." And I just slammed the axe into one of the tree stumps, and then I went over and helped them load stuff to the barge, and I went back with them while some of the others were working on the island. And then later, when we got back to the island, I did the same thing, and the same worker came to me and was like, "Whoa, did you cut down all this yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did, with the axe, by hand, and dragged it up here." And they were like, okay. No appreciation whatsoever. So then, 2 days later, I was working with the employer, 2 employers, another worker, and this worker who had made this comment. And I'm not mad at this. Obviously, that was annoying. As far as I'm concerned, that other day, that was annoying. I have no issues mainly with most, other than the ignorance as far as I'm concerned to certain things they believe and some of their moral behaviors. I don't have any major quarrel at all with any of the other workers. One of them I actually got to know very well, a person who was who was my age, who was born in Ukraine, who was Ukrainian, but had lived in Turks and Caicos for most of their life, and they had talked about their experience living in the Caribbean and all of that. And I actually wish I had said goodbye to them, or at least, because they gave me their phone number, I wish I had texted them to check in on them, because by now, well, they're definitely most likely back in Turks and Caicos. But I have no issue, major issue, just on a personable level, in terms of, I didn't take major issue with most of the other workers. Okay, that's what I'll say. And what was the tipping point is we were splitting wood with a wood splitter, taking logs, pressing them into this conveyored machine that had an axe tilt at the end of it, or like an axe head, and would split it down the other end with a pressure mechanism of some kind. We were doing that, and then as my work partner went to go use the washroom. I waited because I didn't know what to do. And I didn't go and ask my employers what to do because every time they would contradict themselves and tell me, if you don't know what you're doing, come to us and we'll give you something to do. Between that and, Cam, if you don't know what you're doing, just get out of the way. So I didn't know what to do by this point. And then one of my employers comes out and is like, Cam, you can't just be standing around. You gotta be doing something. Which, as far as I'm concerned, no, I didn't, by the way, as well. I'm tired of this absolute idiotic, this capitalist ideal of fucking work, work, work. You gotta be looking like you're doing something at a job. No, you fucking don't. If there's nothing to do, there's nothing to fucking do. You don't need to be looking like you're working to make it seem like you're a hard worker. That's a load of performative nonsense as far as I'm concerned. To make it just look like your fucking company actually is working around the clock tirelessly, not skipping a beat. It's pointless and it's nonsense. And a waste of energy as far as I'm concerned. But I wanted to just be negotiable, as I do with people. And so they said, bring that hose over to to a certain location on the property. I did that, or I moved what I thought they had pointed at as being the hose. I went and did that when they went back in the shed. And then once I did that, I saw that my partner was coming back. And so I went over to the same spot I was at to greet them and actually ask them what to do next. And right as I did that, of course, my employer comes staggering out and doesn't see me walking back there. And is like, Cam, I fucking told you to go do something right now, and I told you to go move this here. And I said I did, and said, I want to see their name. I said, my partner is coming back, and they're like, I don't care. And they got up right in my face and said, I don't care what they're fucking doing. I gave you an order to do something, and I'm paying you every hour to actually work for me. You're stealing from me just standing here. Is that fair? Is that fair? And I kept trying to interrupt, and I didn't even say, because they were trying to get me to say yes to is that fair, or no, is that fair, is that fair? Actually, yeah, it is fair. As far as I'm concerned, you're my oppressor, and you have an authoritarian hold over my finances. As far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't even be having that ability with my financial means for survival, in the way that a capitalistic system is set up. But I didn't say anything. I just looked at them sternly and just didn't say anything. They were making an absolute ass of themselves. Overly egotistical, getting heavily insecure, overly authoritative, and getting overly aggressive and domineering. Absolute idiot. Well, I went back to work with this other coworker, and they actually complimented me and said, you're doing a good job. And when they went away again, I was working and I started crying a bit. And then I ate lunch by myself, and then one of the employers came down to question me about that, and I said, I'm tired of you. I'm tired of your contradicting nonsense. You constantly tell me to do one thing and then another, and it makes no sense whatsoever, and then you get pissed when I don't do that. And they said, okay, that's not the definition of contradicting, and I literally spelled out the definition of contradicting for them. And they said, yeah, well, we were fine with you for a week of not being able to keep up with the rest of the people. And I said, so what? I don't have the muscular strength as everyone else it seems to be on this team. I don't. I bloody well am working my hardest as I can, and I am damn well trying. So they said, okay, I'm going to give you a day off to think about what you've said, and if you want to come back, you can come back. Otherwise, you can get off the property now. I was like, fuck it, I'm getting off the property now. Here's your shirt back. And I took my golf cart off the property. And that same day, I went back to the cottage and changed, and I decided to go and I drove down a ways to look at some petroglyphs to clear my mind that had been carved in by the indigenous communities of the area. They were a historical site that was off one of the main roads that had mainly been carved by the Weetung First Nation and the Curve Lake, I believe it is, First Nations peoples. And they were encased now in a building unit. They were initially opened like just out, but people, well, ignorant racists and just, well, those who wanting to be deviant and committing a racist act, basically would spray paint all over the hieroglyphs and no, not the petroglyphs. I think there's a differentiation in terminology. Would spray paint the petroglyphs, so they ended up putting facilities surrounding it so that people couldn't actually do that. And they were beautiful. And I talked with one of the someone who was a member of the tribe, one of the tribes that had been affiliated with creating these, and they told me the history about how through here different the Huron Lake peoples had apparently migrated through here, and also I think Wendat peoples had also migrated through here, and the interacting tribes actually had ceremonies where they would mark occasions, certain occasions on the petroglyphs, in designs with the petroglyphs. And it was very, very, it was very nice. And that calmed me down for the day. And then I went to a little gas station on the side of the road to charge up my golf cart, and one of my coworkers from the job that I just quit at came by because they were looking to eat something, because they were constantly hungry. They were always having a hankering for something. And they're like, oh, well, shit, guess I got here too late. And I'm like, yeah, it's closed. And they were like, peace. I'm sorry about what happened. They didn't say it, but I know they meant just like, I wish you well. Peace. I was like, thank you. And so, for the next month, as my extended relatives would come and go between various weeks, usually within 2-week intervals, where they would come up to the cottage, party their asses off, or just get together and trash the place while they were there, and then clean it up and spout ignorant nonsense at some points, and at other points it was genuinely, I had pleasant interactions with them at points, and at other points I felt severely alienated from them. I only have myself to blame for not actually speaking up, but they have themselves to blame for their ignorance in terms of not knowing something. Obviously, I don't blame them for not having the information when it was... I'm not having the information initially, but for certain things, it's clear that I don't think they want to educate themselves in some way. Anyway, after a month went by, I had, on Kijiji, I had purchased Carlene, my side-by-side. She was easily the best motorized vehicle, best vehicle I've ever owned and used. Timmy is easily the second best, my intersex motorized bike. He got me... I'm proud that he made it as far as he did, and that, well, that they lasted as long as they did, because the dealer was even surprised when I had spoke to them over text that the bike had lasted going out into the countryside and over the hills, the small hills of Ontario, that long, which I'm happy about. And so well, he was the second best vehicle I ever had. Trudy, my female, my cis female electric golf cart, she is a disgrace to my name. She can go to hell. Okay, no, never mind. Trudy, you did your best, and you will be remembered for doing your best that you could. And impressively enough, you got to the places that I needed you to get to, at the very least. And you lasted longer than, well, what average for a golf cart that was electric powered would usually be accustomed to. How they usually function. So, proud of you for that. But you were still the worst out of all. Carlene, though, my cis female UTV side-by-side, she was the most magnificent vehicle I ever had. She operated smoothly, and I was able, for 2 weeks, I drove her around in and out of villages and towns to actually obtain certain items. And when I knew I needed necessities, here's another story. I took a day to drive into Peterborough and actually test out just the workings and give myself a driving test for this side-by-side. And it was a children's side-by-side. So it was meant for kids maybe age 10 to 13. And I made it work. And I looked at a route on satellite imagery of a map and was going to take back roads because I know police would have been all over me on the main roads. I took back roads. I spent the whole day going through the countryside, out from Crow's Landing down towards McCracken's Landing, went through the back passage that initially took me to this intersection to Lakefield, went out towards what's the name? Well, went out towards Curve Lake, the Curve Lake First Nation Reserve, which was around there, through some more country roads, and I went on the road and also on the side of the road when any cars were pulling by me, and drove through. It was a very nice hot summer day, and the breeze filling my air. The breeze filling my air? The breeze filling my hair and my face, just with the glow of the sun and things of the sort, and, well, just cool, crisp feeling. And I had gotten to the outskirts of Peterborough, and I parked Carlene at a small ice cream parlor that was also attached to a creamery. That was a dairy creamer factory that was outside of Peterborough. And I then hitchhiked into Peterborough to try and get to Walmart and also Canadian Tire, because I didn't know of any other places other than those two damn mega corporate branches that sold what I needed. And what I needed was a wagon. Where are we at now? Okay. It was a wagon that, would attach, that I could try and rig up and attach to my side-by-side. And I got it. And it was I think it was made of felt. It was one of those red, picnic wagons, I guess you could call it, for carrying items. And I walked it with all the other belongings. I had some rope, tape, and I also bought mirrors, because my side-by-sides most often don't come with mirrors attached to them, at least obviously not kids' side-by-sides. When I started researching them, I had found that out. And so I figured, okay, I'm going to use tape to rig up mirrors to Carlene, which I showcased at the end of the video I made once I left the cottage, titled Moving Forward in a Friendship Ending and Learning from Loss and Betrayal. Which you can go watch that if you want. And I had walked it out, and it was getting to dusk at this point, back to the creamery. And I had rigged up the handle with the rope, and I had also bought a golden chain. I believe it's called a mooring chain, to hook up and tow, well, just say a trailer or something. I'd bought it, and then I had wrapped, with the rope, I had wrapped a bunch of duct tape around it to just secure it tightly, which I did. And then for the lights, I quickly, obviously, for some reason, the store didn't have any left side rear view, oh, not lights, what am I talking about? The mirrors. I bought, did I say, okay, if in case I said lights for the rest of what I was explaining, I meant to say mirrors. I bought mirrors for my side-by-side. These mirrors, I bought back-end reflecting mirrors for rear view, well, visibility. And they didn't have left side mirrors for some reason. So what I did was, you can see it in the video at the end. The side that was on, well, the right side, obviously was facing upright, and I had tied it together with acrylic tape. And then for the other side, I had flipped it down into a downward view. I'd basically just put it in reverse, in terms of how it's supposed to be, well, placed. And then I tied it to the right end side of the frame of Carlene, and it worked. And I could actually, I could see like visibility through both of them in the back. The one on the right side more so just for, it was more towards the back and downward view of the road, but thankfully my wagon was there, so it was able to be seen. And then the other one right beside me in the driver's seat, I actually could, if I leaned over, see like out behind me for any cars coming. And it was getting dark, and I was thinking, okay, I hope this works if I reverse it well enough. And going forward, when I had that, I had to sort of pull it back, like the wagon and also my side-by-side. It was light enough for me to pull it backwards at first so I could get some room out and then turn. But long story short, I did it, and I was like, oh my fucking god, it's working! It's working! It actually works. And I also got to see, as I pulled up to a reflective sign on the road, that, thank god, my headlights were working, because I didn't know if because this was a used side-by-side that I purchased from a dealer on Kijiji. And I was like, please let it work, don't let them be damaged, and they worked amazingly. They were the best headlights that I've ever had. See in the dark, and through the darkness of, well, the early night, I drove the same along these dead-end, well, these desolate country roads back to Crow's Landing. And I got pulled over by a police officer, and they were overly authoritative and aggressive, but they let me go. So that was nice. And then my extended family betrayed my trust. Go watch my before leaving the cottage videos, and the one I made after it where I just said change of plans getting to Ottawa a different way video, if you want more context to that, because I'm not going to go into it here.
And I guess as well, go watch the Made It to Ottawa video. So, it's that. Just for now, quickly, because kind of running out of time. I guess I'll just describe some stories from Ottawa that I talk about. Well, showcased a lot of what went on. Talked about it. Oh, you know what? I think that's... You know what? I think that's enough for now. If I make more of these videos similar to this about talking about stories and experiences I've had along my travels so far, I'll mention some things about Ottawa. But I showcased a lot of my explorations in terms of physical explorations in the videos I made whilst there. And, well, yeah, I think that's enough for now. But, okay, now for this end bit of the video. I'm actually going to talk about something I was contemplating whether I should, but no, I'm not going to keep it a secret anymore. I'm actually going to talk about it. I was thinking about mentioning it when I maybe got either back up to the northern end of Laval, or maybe into Montreal, or maybe even waiting till Longueuil to talk about it, or in terms of going into full-on depth about it, maybe even waiting as far off as Lévis, Quebec, to talk about it when I got to the city of Lévis. But you know what? No. I'll talk about it here with the time I have. So, as far as I'm concerned by this point, I've obviously self-proclaimed myself as an analytical neuroscientist. By all merit of definition, by all merit from what I've done, what I do on a daily basis, and what I've done in terms of proposing scientific theories, and the hypotheses I've made, the implementations I feel are needed into various fields of research, and just in general, my explorations, self-proclaim myself as a neuroscientist, and as well as from me still offering, even without a medical kit now, because it was stolen, and having assessed one patient now, offering my services in what way I can as being a self-employed medic. It's mainly specializing in the realms of neurology, psychology, and sexology, and in whatever ways I can just in general healthcare I can help in terms of someone who's in distress.
I'm offering up my services with that. But, and as well as soon to be, I'll be what I call a sensualistic pornographer. Or I'll be making pornography for the purposes of sexual entertainment and relaxation, also for human social connectivity, and for those who experience the psychosexological phenomenon that I call connective sexual empathy. I've given them a name as well, which I'll mention in another video I'll make soon. Those who experience that I would call sexual empaths, and to help with human connectivity, and also just self-sexual connectivity for someone exploring their own sexual desires, and just for emotional, erotic, artistic creation and emotional stimulation. Those are the purposes of why I'm going to be making pornography. But along with those, I have decided, so I've talked about how I initially wanted to be a video game writer and also a stock photographer. Now, if you read the description of my channel right now, I've said that those career paths, those two are on hold right now, if possibly indefinitely. I don't know if I'll ever pick those up again. As when I was in Ottawa, I read the printed out detailed plot synopsises that I had, the plot outlines that I had, the story elements for video game ideas that I had been working on for years, for about at least 3 years at that point. But, because, well, video games are my personal favorite form of artistic creation and entertainment. I love the idea, not just various video games, but the idea of how you can tell a story with a video game. You being literally at the helm and in the seat of a character and making their physical movements and choices. But I can go into that in another video. But given everything I've experienced and ideas I've had, something else that I'm now going to be doing, that for my time here in Laval, I have been working on, to some degree, crafting the ideas for. I haven't started typing them out, but I've made the titles for them. I am becoming an author. Yep, I am writing books. Now, not novels. I'm actually going to try and, I'm not going to try and make my stories that I'm writing here. Some aren't even stories. In fact, the majority of them are actually non-fiction writings in relation to analytical neuroscience and psychology, philosophy, sociology, entertainment, things of the sort, politics and just political theory and discussion, things of the sort. I've crafted the ideas for them, but I'm not going to start actually writing them until I finish fully outlining and, well, typing out my theories, which I'm still working on getting fully typed out. So I'm not going to do that until I finish those, which hopefully I'll get done during my time in Montreal, or if I have to finish it in Longueuil. And I want to keep them to novellas. So a novella, if you don't know what it is, it's technically, it's a little longer than, I actually thought it was initially the technical term for a short story, but apparently no, in literature it's a little longer technically than a short story. Most novellas are roughly between like 150 to maybe 200 to 250 pages at the most, in between that realm there. but they're obviously not the size of, say, a novel, which a novel is on average about maybe beyond 300, 400, or beyond 300, 400 pages. And there's really only technically 3 reasons why I want to make them novellas. One, I don't personally have the want to write a novel. I may have the time to make feature-length films with me yammering on here, but I don't have the time to write. I have passion for these, yes, absolutely. Mass passion. I'm very much wanting to make these. They outline a lot of ideas that I've been feeling for a long time. But I don't want to make novels. I definitely don't. And I'm not going to be writing them in any particular order as far as I'm concerned. I will write them all as just collectively, as when I gather ideas for them. I will just, in my notes app, I will write when I feel I need to write for this specific book. And so why I want to make them novellas is I don't feel I have the time, but I don't want to make novels. 2 is because the information that I'm providing for them, for both the nonfiction and the fictional stories that I'm writing, they don't need to be novels. They don't. Especially in regards to the nonfiction. The ideas that I'm presenting here, because they're all my nonfiction ones, I've labeled them in terms of genre as well: nonfiction, educational, and analysis, and social observation, as I just talked about it, like with the various different fields of research and scientific, understanding that they're for. They don't need to be novels. They don't. The information can be digested and understood in the amount of time as a novella, I feel. And in relation to that, I feel, I guess, most people, in terms of what most of the world, for literary writing, most people really, especially within a lot of younger demographics nowadays, and for a lot of time it's gradually been becoming, in terms of attention span, to some degree. Well, no, it's not in a neurological sense. No, it's not really attention span. It's just interest. A lot of people say, well, it's like, well, with their, please, okay, no, I'll stay on topic and then I'll talk about this. So, people have often told me that either performatively, or even people who actually do genuinely care about, when I've been in discussion with them, what I'm saying and trying to convey with my knowledge that I'm sharing with them, or if we're debating or discussing different topics and I'm talking about things that I've learned or I know, or I present them with some amount of facts that they might not have known, and they genuinely seem interested in it. Either way, I've constantly been told, wow, you're really intelligent in this regard. You should write a book on this, or you should make a novel. You should publish a book on this. I talked about this in my second part of Exploring Gatineau when I was leaving Ottawa. Okay, in relation to my theories, my scientific proposals, I should not, and I still stand by this. In fact, one of these books is going to talk about you people who performatively say this, or who have this conformist traditionalist mindset and belief that you need to get an education and diploma, and you need to go through the oppressive systematic forces that determine licensing to be an expert, or so-called expertise, and get so-called education in these fields. You need to go through that, and then you need to go through a publishing agency, and you need to publish books, you need to make mass amounts of works and win awards and all this shit to actually be taken seriously as an author, or in this regard, load of fucking ridiculousness. And one of these books talks about you people who hold this mental belief, if that's so, of the idiocy. That is, that I should not have to, okay, my stance still is, and I said this in Exploring Gatineau Part 2, obviously I've changed my mind about writing books. I wasn't going to write any sort of book. I didn't plan on doing so. But I still stand by, regardless. Whether or not I was to make these novellas or not, I should not have to write a book for you to take me seriously. I should not have to. I should not have to write a piece of literature for you to actually have interest in what I'm talking about. And by the way, for any of you who, like, it's funny, a lot of these same people who say who've said I should write a book have told me that, oh, I want to watch your videos on your channel, but I don't have the attention span to, or I don't have the time in my daily life to, and it gets so busy and I don't have time to do this, but I actually genuinely want to. Okay, if you, let's say you're very busy, I understand that. I really genuinely do understand that. But you are interested to hear what I'm saying. But you've also told me I should write a book to get people to actually take me seriously on these topics, to actually be seen as professional. If you don't have the time to watch my goddamn 2.5 hour to 3 hour long videos, you don't have the time to read a fucking book. You don't. You don't. Stop lying to yourself. You don't, even if it's a novella or a short story, you don't have the time to read it. You don't have the time to listen to an audiobook version of it, I guarantee as well. And if it's and for those who are saying that it's their attention spans, who have said, like, I've even sometimes got one or two comments here and there saying, like, you should make your video shorter because most people's attention spans don't last as long, or they won't have mass interest in it if it's this length or whatever. Okay, I very much do believe right now, like, I don't think that's an issue in terms of cognitive attention. From my own judgment as a neuroscientist, I don't believe that's actually, unless you do, obviously, for those who are diagnosed and have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and have, well, are trying, how their temporal lobes are overactive and are trying to obtain more focus, as far as I'm concerned, retain as much information presented to them as possible. It's not actually a deficit in attention. But for those who are more distractible, let's say, okay, I understand that. I have a feeling that most people who comment these on my videos, say these things, I don't think it's your attention span. And for most people's attention spans in the world, being so short nowadays, that's not true. I don't think it's people's attention spans. It's their actual motivation to do so, and it's their actual interest. Most people will pretend to actually have an interest in someone's, like, what they're saying. As far as I'm concerned, histrionic personality disorder is the most common and widespread personality disorder in the world. Still stand by, 1 out of 9 people suffer from it. It's not an attention span, it's lack of interest. They don't care enough to. So, anyway, as far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't have to read these books whenever they're done to take me seriously on what I'm trying to present, knowledge-wise. And in regards to these books, you might be asking, well, how am I going to release them to the public? Well, in this regard, I was thinking of 2 methods. One, if I can, I want to do the same thing with my theories, and one of the books is just going to be a collection of my theories, my scientific proposals. I wanted to just well, nothing happened with that. It's just an owner and their dog roaming around here. So, anyway. In terms of releasing them to the public, I thought about PDFs online to just release the non-fiction writings, my theories, and damn it, my phone's dying. Shit, I don't have any charge for it. My stories, things of the sort, to PDFs online. But I also thought about just publicly, just free on the internet. One way or another, they're going to be free, at least on my end. Or another thought I had is, even though, okay, so right now my finances are dwindling more than they ever have been before. I was hoping that would hopefully not happen until maybe I got into as I was about to leave Montreal or get into Longueuil. But well, that is what it is. So but even though my finances are dwindling, what I'm gonna do, or maybe what I may try to do, is create my own website. A small one. Not anything extravagant, not anything big, just a website. That's if I use a website operator, whichever one it is. I need to look up more into that. Using whatever platform to create my website that would charge most likely a fee, like a monthly payment of some kind, the cheapest one possible, and just release my books to there, and maybe, if I could, re-upload, and obviously keep my YouTube channel as well at the moment. Because, well, unfortunately, it's easier accessibility for you guys to see. But I'll have to see, maybe upload my videos as well, and just do general discussions on there. But also, in that regard, upload my porn to it, my porno videos that whenever I make them, which, in regards to that, I have decided I will be oh my god, hi. Oh, well, you're a mud wasp. No, are you a mud wasp? Oh god, you look like a mud wasp. Great. Well, you stay there, and I stay here, and we'll be fine, okay? Just don't sting my goddamn naughty bits, please. Okay, anyway. I don't know how you got in here. Uploading my pornographic videos to this website, as well as on Pornhub, most likely. Now, what I would do is, I'll take payments, because I'll be doing it. This isn't obviously, like I just discussed, the main reason why I'd be doing pornography, but in terms of an income of some kind, I'd be doing my pornographic videos on Pornhub for payment, setting up a modeling pay plan with well, some sort of, well, with Pornhub, just for when I'm uploading them. And for that, I thought, well, for however much traction my
videos get, I believe, this might not be correct, but it might be $3 per... It might be $3 per 500 views, or maybe 600 views. Like, for that amount, you get paid $3. Very, very low income for those starting off who are more indie pornographers. That's very shit. That's, well, pretty well close to, garners a few more views, well, close to minimum wage of, well, say, most of Canada. But anyway, I would use whatever funds generated from that, and also if I gain another job at some point in Quebec City, ideally, to obviously use to pay for basic necessities, resources, and also to pay for the monthly fee for this website generator, or this platform. And also, as well as that, with my books and maybe my YouTube videos, upload my pornographic videos to that. And also, maybe specifically only upload certain ones to Pornhub, needed for finance, and others onto that website for free, obviously. And also on Pornhub, they're going to be for free. I'm not charging. The dilemma I have here is I don't want to use Pornhub. They're a mega corporate pornographic production and studio, well, pornographic distribution platform, and also studio. They have their own production team. They are a horrendous, cutthroat monopoly as far as I'm concerned, and they're very, very, very morally inept as far as... I'm not going to go into it fully here. But, well, I feel the same way about YouTube. Oh well. But, one way or another, even if I was to go to a smaller pornographic site, like, say, Cam Horrors, or maybe even, I think, even for Pornzog, and there's another one, I can't think of it right now, but, what's this guy? Oh, 2%, yeah, you're gonna die. I'm not, for those, I would have to charge. Sadly, you can release certain videos publicly without a fee, but others, the platforms do require their performers actually private their videos for payment, a fee, or subscription. I'm not doing that. I don't believe that for art. So that's one option, and along with that, along with those two options, I'm also going to just print off copies of my books and drop them at whatever libraries I come across, and like, hey, here you go, you can have them. Or a small indie publishing company, if I come across them on my travels, and be like, hey, I would appreciate if you publish these. You do what you do. Here they are. Go ahead and publish them if you want. And I'm not taking any payment for my books either. Well, I'm not taking payment from my pornography. I'm not taking any payment for my books. Nope, I'm releasing them completely for free. If I put it with a publishing company and they want to make profit off of it, I don't agree with it, obviously, and obviously I don't agree with the systematic and systemic forces of the world, but, well, I'm not going to dictate their morality on that. They do as they do. But I'm not making payment off of it, if I do so. I'm not. And so, and as of how many, you're probably asking, Cam, how many books are you going to have? 62. Yep, right now, I have currently 62, the titles and the ideas formulated. Large quantity of them are nonfiction, educational, but another portion are nonfiction, and some of them are historical fiction, and one of them, and 7 of them, are in a series that I'm writing, an anthology series,
which I'm very excited about. And basically, I'm not going to say what it is right now, but its abbreviations are the EER series. The EER. So, it's, most of them, except for one, are historical fiction and tragedy based. And they're alternate universe stories. But they all have connecting themes, basically, obviously, as anthologies do. And all of them, both non-fiction and the fictional works I have, for the well, not all of them, most of them, have very long titles for works of fiction. I recently actually told this on a phone call to one of my friends in Toronto, and they were like, God, don't make long titles, please, I hate them so much. And they were like, I don't think it sounds pretentious, but I think it's, I don't know why. They actually said they don't know why they hate it, but I want to be as specific as possible with these. But I'll talk about that more at a later date. So, in that regard, they have very long titles. Not tremendously long as far as I'm concerned. Then again, I think my perception of length in terms of time is, well, as you can tell, very skewed. But, well, that's what I'll be doing. And I'm going to discuss, what am I saying? For the non-fiction works, I will also talk about that along with the fictional works that I'm crafting up. When I do, I will make a video in regards to them, going over the synopsis of them, of both non-fiction. But for now, I'll leave it at that. But know that I am becoming an author, self-proclaimed again. And my phone just died. Yep. It's night. More specifically, it's 10:37 p.m. So, as you heard in the last clip, my phone died, and, well, I decided to, well, obviously, go in to the neighborhood that I'm in, and actually out of this little wooded area, and go to a restaurant, eat something, and charge my devices, because I'd already used up the charge on my portable, well, charger. I'm just capping this off here. Oh, and I am once again, well, hold on. I'm still very much naked, as you can tell. And you might be asking, why? Because I felt like it, that's why. I wanted to just get naked again and roam around a bit, despite the amount of mosquitoes that there are, but actually they're not really bothering me at the moment. So, just to cap off what I was saying, yes, I'm becoming an author. Oh, and along with, for the fictional writings, the EER series, there will also be a certain amount of singular fiction writing, but one of them is going to be set in the same universe as, that would be probably that raccoon I saw. One of them will be set in the same universe as one of the, well, stories in the ER, and the rest will be just singular
separate fictional universes, as well as various adaptations slash remakes of a certain series, well, 2 certain series that were books, films, and also certain ones that were video games. I guess some of them re-novelizations, as I'm calling them. As well as erotica books. Yep, pornographic novellas. And I'll talk more about those at a future date when I discuss the books further, but I actually wanted to give genuine erotica writing a try. Like, actually, I want to genuinely try and make... I'm only going to do 2 books based on this. Well, it'll be a collection of short stories that are... Basically, I want to do, well, sexually charged narratives that are for sexual arousal and are meant to be, well, you're meant to masturbate to them, basically. But displaying, obviously, human sexual connectivity. And also, I want to obviously make the stories consensual, but also write in a way to depict obvious human flaw and, well, human faults in relation to sexual and romantic relationships, and also just problems that the characters may face, like in, well, the socio-political and socio-cultural settings that they are raised in. So, there'll be that. As well as a story from the perspective of a dying dementia patient. And also one from the perspective of a snake. But, again, I will talk more about that in the future. Oh, also, let me correct, within the last few hours I have come up with a few more ideas for novellas. So it is not... I don't have 62 books that I will be writing. I now have 65. And hopefully that'll be the last... That's the final amount. 65 books I will be attempting to write. And again, I will see to it that I make no profit off of any of it. Absolutely none of it. Not a cent. So, that's that. Oh, and I guess, well, if you can see these lights behind me, these spotlights on the side of a very ginormous and towering wall. Well, that's just a little teaser for the next video. Okay, so, I'll edit this together. Yes, I'll sign off with, oh, by the way, yeah, this is a new lighter. I had purchased this just, yesterday, and it's working like a charm, because my other one was stolen. Well, because I had it in my backpack. But, okay. That's that. Enjoy this final clip of, smiley face with, well, a smiley face that's smoking a blunt in a public washroom. Because I found it funny, so I recorded it.